Two cops arrested a black man at a rest stop, then walked into court the next day and found him sitting on the bench as their judge. It was supposed to be a quick break, 10 minutes, maybe less. Judge Terrence Malcolm Everett had just finished a 3-day legal conference in Topeka, Kansas, and was headed back home to Little Rock, Arkansas. He wasn't in his robe or courtroom shoes, just a gray polo, jeans, and the kind of tired eyes only long hours and constant expectations can give you. The sun was leaning west, brushing orange light across the highway, and after nearly 4 hours on the road, he pulled off at a rest stop near Coffeyville, population barely 9,000. A few semis were parked in the lot, and one family with a minivan was finishing up lunch at a nearby picnic table. Terrence parked under a tree, got out, and rolled his neck slowly. His phone buzzed in his hand, another voicemail from his clerk. He looked around, took a few steps toward the grass, and answered a call from his wife, Yvonne. "Still on the road?" she asked. "Just pulled over." "Don't worry, I'm not driving while talking," he said with a slight chuckle, needed to stretch. They spoke for a few minutes about dinner, about their son Marcus's report card, about nothing in particular. He could hear birds chirping, cars humming by in the distance. That's what made it peaceful, quiet, but not dead, familiar. Then he noticed a white pickup truck slowing as it entered the rest area, sheriff's markings on the side. Another cruiser followed, lights off. He didn't think anything of it. Judges aren't above the law, but they're used to seeing law enforcement around. The judge even gave a small nod toward the first deputy as he walked past to toss a water bottle into the trash can, but the man didn't nod back. He stared. Judge Everett glanced at his phone, still talking to Yvonne. "Everything okay?" she asked, hearing the silence in his breath. "Yeah," he replied slowly. I think the local police just pulled in." He didn't say it, but his tone had changed. Not because of fear. Terrence Everett had spent his life in courtrooms standing firm under pressure, but because he knew that look, the one that scanned you like you weren't supposed to be where you were. Two deputies got out. One was tall, thin, reddish hair. The other shorter, broader, a thick mustache. Both white, both walking his way now. "You mind hanging up the phone for a minute, sir?" the tall one said, hand resting on his belt. Terrence narrowed his eyes, confused. "May I ask what this is about? We got a call about a suspicious individual out here," the stocky one added. "You match the description?" Terrence raised an eyebrow. "Description? Black male alone near the trees might be high." He let out a breath, not angry, just tired. "Officers, I'm Judge Everett. I just stopped to stretch and take a call. I can show you my ID." He reached calmly into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, offering his license and judicial badge. They didn't even look closely. The taller deputy took a step forward. "We still need you to place your hands on the hood of the vehicle, sir." "You're detaining me?" "No, not detaining. Just making sure everything checks out. You just said I matched a vague description. That's not reasonable suspicion." Everett replied. "You're refusing to comply," the stocky one asked, already raising his voice. "No, I'm explaining that I know my rights. I'm a judge, not a threat, and I've done nothing wrong," but that only made them more aggressive. The moment he hesitated to move, they grabbed his arms and forced them behind his back. His phone fell to the ground mid-call. One of them picked it up, saw Yvonne's name on the screen, and ended the call without a word. Terrence didn't shout. He didn't fight. He stood with the kind of restraint that most people never have to learn. The kind that comes from decades of knowing that if you speak too loud, you're the problem. But as they pushed him toward the cruiser, his heart sank. Not from fear. For the first time in years it was disgust. But this was only the beginning, because someone had been watching from the far end of the lot. Phone camera already rolling. The camera caught everything. A teenager sitting in the back seat of his mom's SUV had noticed the scene unfolding and quietly started recording. His mother, unaware, was scrolling through a food delivery app in the front seat trying to find the nearest burger joint. In the video, Judge Everett is shown calmly talking, then being grabbed, handcuffed, and led to the cruiser like a shoplifter caught red-handed. No yelling, no threats, just two officers doing what they'd done before, acting like power gave them permission. In the back of the car, Terrence sat stiffly, wrists still tight in the cuffs. One of the deputies, Brent Callahan, stood outside the door, arms crossed like he had just accomplished something. The other one, Dustin McGraw, was standing by the hood of the car, still checking Everett's ID like it might suddenly reveal a car. The irony wasn't lost on the judge. He had presided over dozens of misconduct cases like this. Trained lawyers, disciplined cops, cases with nuance, yes, but also plenty that started exactly like this. An officer who saw a black man alone and assumed the worst. Inside the cruiser, Terrence spoke. "Deputy Callahan, is it?" The man glanced over but didn't reply. "I want to make it clear. I haven't been read my rights. I haven't been informed of any crime. I'm a sitting judge with jurisdiction in this state." Callahan finally leaned down, eyes squinting. "And I want to make it clear that judges don't get special treatment. You could be the governor. You still follow orders." "I've followed every lawful order you've given," Terrence replied, calm but sharp. "I told you who I was. I showed ID. You chose to ignore it." McGraw came back to the car. "Dispatch isn't finding anything on this guy. No warrants, nothing." "Run it again," Callahan said. "Something feels off." "Or maybe," Terrence cut in, "you're just uncomfortable with the idea that a black man in a polo shirt can have more authority than you." The pause between them was brief, but heavy. McGraw looked uncomfortable for the first time. He opened the passenger door, sat down, and muttered, "We should have waited for backup." "Backup for what?" Ever asked. "I made a phone call and threw away a bottle." From the corner of the lot, the teen's camera was still running. His mom had noticed now. "Stop recording, Jalen," she whispered. "I can't." They didn't even ask what he was doing. They just cuffed him. Back inside the cruiser, Callahan leaned into the window. "I don't care who you say you are. If you're really a judge, you can complain later. At now, you're staying put until we say otherwise." Terrence leaned back, looking straight ahead. "Oh, I will. I absolutely will." Then came the distant sound of another siren. Short, sharp, different from the county ones. It pulled into the lot fast, slowing only at the last second. A Kansas state trooper stepped out, tall, brown-skinned, wearing sunglasses and a clean-pressed uniform. He scanned the scene quickly. Man cuffs, 2 local deputies, tense energy. "Everything all right here?" the trooper asked. Callahan stepped forward, trying to sound confident. "We had a report of a suspicious subject matched the description. We're just checking ID." The trooper looked in the cruiser window, his eyes locked on Everett's face, then his body froze just slightly. "Judge Everett," Terrence nodded. "Good to see a familiar face. Release him now." The trooper said, voice flat. Callahan blinked. "Wait, what? You know this guy?" "Yeah, that's Judge Terrence Everett, Federal Circuit Court. He gave the keynote address at the conference yesterday." Silence, a long one. Then Callahan, clearly rattled, stepped back and fumbled with the handcuffs. "You didn't say you were a judge," McGraw muttered. "I said it twice," Everett replied. "You just didn't want to believe it." But the real reckoning wasn't in that parking lot. It was going to come less than 24 hours later, in a courtroom neither of them expected. The cuffs were finally off, but the weight of them still pressed into Judge Everett's skin like a slow burn. He rubbed his wrists, then looked both deputies straight in the eyes, one by one, not with anger, not even resentment, just the sharp clarity of a man who'd seen this cycle too many times before. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, he just nodded once to the state trooper. "I'll be filing a report," he said quietly. "Of course, sir," the trooper replied, already side-eyeing the deputies with barely concealed irritation. "I'll submit a statement, too." This was way out of line. But the deputies didn't apologize. They didn't even pretend. McGraw mumbled something about just doing protocol, and Callahan had the nerve to walk away like it was all beneath him. Terrence returned to his car in silence. He sat for a long minute before touching the ignition. His phone, now on the passenger seat, was buzzing non-stop. Messages from Yvonne, missed calls from his clerk, and a new one from a number he didn't recognize. He played the voicemail. "Hi. I think this is the man from the rest stop. My son recorded what happened. I just thought you should have a copy in case you need it. He didn't mean to be nosy, but it didn't seem right. I'll text you the video. The message ended, and within seconds the video arrived. Judge Everett tapped the screen and watched himself on film, calm, polite, cuffed. Anyway, the camera didn't lie. He knew what this could mean, especially in an election year. He'd always tried to stay off the political radar, to stick to the law, and let the press chase after other judges. But this wasn't about fame. It was about truth. The video was already circulating by the time he reached the city limits. Someone had posted it online with the caption, "When a judge gets treated like just another black man." By midnight, it had 500,000 views. Yvonne stayed up waiting, still in her robe. When Terrence walked through the door, she wrapped her arms around him tighter than usual. No questions. Not at first, just breathing. "I saw the video," she whispered. "They really did that." He nodded. "They didn't care who I was. I told them. They just didn't listen. And the trooper? He's the reason I'm home." She stepped back and looked him over, her hands lingering on his arms like she needed to make sure he was still in one piece. "You going to let this go?" Terrence didn't answer right away. He looked past her out at the kitchen window where the porch light lit up the ailas he planted every spring. "Not this time," he said. "I've let too much slide in the name of peace. This time they're going to hear it from the bench." The next morning, the courthouse in Sebastian County, Arkansas was packed, not just with lawyers and reporters, but with everyday people, custodians, teachers, grocery clerks, folks who saw the video and felt like it happened to them. At 8:45 a.m., two men walked through the metal detectors, eyes low, suits wrinkled. Callahan and McGraw didn't look nearly as bold without their uniforms. No belts, no guns, just clip-on ties and courtroom nerves. Their boots echoed in the hallway as they were escorted to hearing room 3B. "Who's the judge again?" Callahan asked. "Some guy from the circuit court." "Don't know him," McGraw muttered. They stepped into the room, sat at the respondent table, pulled out papers. Then the bailiff spoke. "All rise." Both men stood. Judge Everett entered, robe on, expression unreadable. He took his seat behind the bench. Callahan blinked once. McGraw's mouth parted, but no sound came out. It was him, the man they cuffed, the man they ignored, now the man holding their future in his hands. But Judge Eve, Rhett wasn't there to get even. He was there to make a decision that would echo louder than any personal revenge ever could. The silence in that courtroom was like gravity, thick, pressing, impossible to ignore. Callahan and McGrath stood frozen, like statues caught in a downpour. The same man they dismissed as some guy loitering was now sitting high above them, black robe draped over his shoulders, nameplate gleaming in front of him. Judge T.M. Everett. He adjusted his glasses and flipped through a few pages on the bench, not rushing. The room was watching him. Reporters scribbled notes. Lawyers exchanged quiet glances. He finally looked up. Deput Brent Callahan. "Deputy Dustin McGraw," he said slowly, his voice steady but cool. "You are here today under internal review for conduct unbecoming of law enforcement officers. Is that correct?" Callahan cleared his throat. "Yes, Your Honor." "You understand these proceedings are not criminal in nature," Everett continued, "but they are official, and your records, your roles, and possibly your badges are at stake." "Yes, sir," McGraw muttered. "I won't recuse myself," Everett said plainly, cutting through the air. "Let me say that clearly for the record. What happened yesterday does not disqualify me from hearing this case. If either of you wish to object, you are welcome to file that motion now." They didn't. They couldn't. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. McGraw's lawyer, a slim middle-aged man named Elliot Pui, stood. "Your Honor, my client recognizes your right to preside. We won't challenge your authority. We only ask for fairness." Judge Everett gave a small nod. "Then let's begin." He turned to the court clerk. "Play the vid." A screen lit up with the footage from the rest stop. Same angle, same harsh sunlight, same shame. The whole room watched as Judge Everett, in casual clothes, explained who he was, watched the deputies ignore it, manhandle him, cuff him, watched the moment McGraw ended the call from Everett's wife without a word, watched Callahan smirk. The playback ended, No one moved. Judge Everett leaned forward. Deputies, would either of you like to offer an explanation before we move forward? Callahan finally stood. His voice shook just a little. We acted on a dispatch call, sir. We didn't recognize you. The situation had escalated fast. You didn't recognize me? Everett asked. Do you require recognition before treating someone with basic respect? No, sir. McGrath stood too, more hesitant. We've had issues with people in that area. Meth users, homeless guys. We made a call in the moment. We didn't mean offense. Judge Everett didn't flinch. Let me explain something. I don't want an apology for not recognizing me as a judge. I want an answer for why in your eyes my presence and my skin were enough to justify violence. I complied. I explained myself. You made your decision the moment you saw me. Neither man responded. The judge's voice lowered. Do you understand how dangerous that is? How many lives have been ruined, not because someone was guilty, but because an officer decided they looked off. He let the words linger, not for drama, but because they needed to. Public servants are held to a higher standard, and that includes both of you. He tapped the gavel once. This hearing is not over, he said, but I suggest you take the next 15 minutes to decide if you're ready to be hope. Nest, not just to this court, but to yourselves. We'll reconvene shortly. He stood, and the room followed. The bailiff opened the side door, and Judge Everett disappeared into chambers. But even behind that closed door, he wasn't alone, because now the country was watching, and the next choice he made would say everything about what justice really means. The hallway outside hearing room 3B was buzzing, not with noise, but with presence. Dozens of people waited in silence, phones clutched, eyes fixed on the double doors like they might swing open with something historic. Word had spread fast. Local news vans parked outside, antennae reaching into the air like curious hands. Reporters had been live for over an hour, and on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Everywhere you looked, the story was boiling. Judge Everett Jar, rest stop justice profiling on camera. The video had crossed 1 million views before the lunch break. The caption had changed too. Now it read he tried to tell them they just didn't care. Inside the courtroom, Callahan sat stiffly, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. McGraw was no better, his lawyer whispering into his ear, but he wasn't listening. He kept glancing at the gallery behind him. There was a young woman in scrubs sitting in the third row, a man in a mechanic's jumpsuit next to her, a few college students, a retired school teacher, all strangers but not really. They were the people these two deputies had sworn to protect, and today they'd come to see what happens when authority meets accountability. The door opened. Judge Everett returned, robe still sharp, eyes unreadable. He took his seat and nodded to the bailiff. Let's proceed. The clerk read through statements from 2 eyewitnesses, including the woman who'd left the voicemail. She testified over Zoom, her voice clear and composed. They didn't ask questions. They went straight to force. My son's 15 and he knew something wasn't right. That's why he filmed it. That's the only reason the truth is out now. Then came the final video dash cam from the state trooper's vehicle. It showed the moment he stepped out, recognized Everett, and ordered the cuffs removed. Callahan slumped in his chair. McGraw dropped his eyes to the floor. Judge Everett folded his hands. Deputies, he said, do you believe you made a mistake? Neither spoke. I'm not asking whether you meant harm, he continued. I'm asking whether you recognize the harm you caused. McGraw's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor, I do. Callahan didn't speak. Everett leaned forward slightly. I've been in this position for 20 years, and for 20 years I've watched officers get protected by silence, by each other, by their department, sometimes even by the courts. But justice doesn't care about your badge. It cares about the truth. He looked at each man for a long moment. I'm recommending disciplinary action to your department, mandatory suspension, and I'm also making a formal referral to the State Attorney General's office for civil review. Whether further action is taken is no longer up to me, but I'm not letting this be buried under paperwork. The room stayed quiet, but the weight of his words was heavy. You're both lucky that I'm sitting here in a robe, he said finally, because if I were anyone else, just a man passing through town, this might have ended very differently. No applause, no shouting, just understanding. Yvonne was in the back now, too. She met his eyes and gave the smallest nod. Not approval, not relief, just quiet support. But justice isn't finished when the gavel drops, because what happened next took the story beyond the courtroom. When court adjourned for the day, the deputies slipped out the side entrance to avoid reporters. But it was too late for shadows. Everything that needed to be seen had already been seen. By the next morning, it was all over the news, not just local stations, but national headlines, cable pundits, online blogs, podcasts. Some defended the deputies, calling it a misunderstanding. Others pointed to the video and said it was a mirror of what millions of people have been shouting for decades. It doesn't matter what you wear, how you speak, or what title you carry. Some folks will only ever see a threat. But inside the courtroom, that moment, the look on Callahan's face when he saw who the judge really was, that moment had become something bigger than just two officers and one man. It had become a question. What happens when power is forced to look itself in the mirror? Judge Everett arrived back in chambers the following morning early. He didn't turn on the TV. He didn't check the headlines. He just sat at his desk with a black pen and a yellow legal pad, writing by hand. Something he rarely did anymore. Not his verdict. That part was done. He was writing something else, a statement. Not to the court, not to the state, to the people. A few hours later, he took the bench again. The courtroom was quieter now. No cameras allowed this time. Just the people. The ones who showed up again voluntarily. I've had a full day to consider what happened here, he began. And not just in the legal sense, personally. He looked out into the rows of faces. Black, white, brown, young, old. There's a truth we all live with, some more than others. That sometimes, no matter how much we accomplish, how we speak, how we dress, someone will still look at us and see other. He paused. The silence felt respectful this time. I've spent my career telling people to believe in the law, to trust it, and I still do. But I also know that trust can't be one-sided. It has to be earned. Every day, on every traffic stop, in every police car, with every badge, Callahan shifted in his seat. His lawyer whispered something, but he didn't react. Justice is not about revenge. I could have easily recused myself, but I stayed because I wanted you both to hear this from someone who knows exactly what that moment felt like. His voice softened, but never lost strength. It felt like being invisible, like nothing I've done or become mattered. McGraw blinked quickly, his shoulders tensed. But here's the part you probably didn't expect. I forgive you. That made Callahan's eyes twitch just for a second. I forgive you not to make you comfortable, but to make myself whole, because what you did doesn't define me, and it sure as hell doesn't get to weigh me down. He reached for his gavel. This court is adjourned. One clean knock. He stood and stepped down from the bench, removing his robe slowly, carefully folding it in his arms as he walked past the table where the two deputies sat. Neither man said a word. But as the judge walked out, not with bitterness, but with purpose, it left the room with a question no one dared to ask out loud. Who do we become when we finally get a taste of the justice we've always preached? By Friday afternoon, the video had passed 5 million views, but Judge Everett hadn't posted once. No interviews, no statements beyond what he said in court. He turned down cable appearances, politely declined every morning show invitation. He wasn't chasing a moment. He was trying to survive it. At home, the porch was quiet. The phone didn't ring as much anymore. His clerk was handling most of the press. His son, Jordan, stayed off social media altogether. Too many folks pretending to get it, he'd said. Too many using it to score points. And maybe that's what bothered Terrence the most. This wasn't a headline. It wasn't content. It was his life. It was his body in those cuffs. His voice calm but ignored. He was back in his office the next week. Cases stacked up, motions to review, decisions to write. The world kept moving, but something inside had shifted quietly, deeply. That morning, he got a knock on his door. The clerk stepped in. "You've got a visitor." "Lawyer or defendant?" Ever asked without looking up. "Neither," she said. "It's a Deputy McGraw. He's alone." He looked up surprised. "Here," she nodded. "Said he doesn't want anything, just to speak. Said if you say no, he'll walk away." Terrence paused, thinking. Then he stood. Send him in. McGraw entered wearing jeans, a flannel shirt, and eyes that looked older than last week. He didn't sit, he didn't shake hands, just stood wringing his fingers. I don't expect this to fix anything, he started, and I know I've got no right to take more of your time, but I had to say something in person. Judge Everett said nothing, just nodded once. I've been in law enforcement for 15 years. I was a good cop. I told myself I was one of the ones who treated people right. But watching that video, hearing my own voice, I didn't even recognize the guy talking. That wasn't protecting people. That was ego. That was fear I didn't want to admit I had. His words stumbled, but he never stopped. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anyone to say I deserve a badge again, but I needed to own it, and I needed to say thank you for not using your power the way I used mine. Terrence looked at him, his face still unreadable. And Officer Callahan? McGraw hesitated. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he believes he did anything wrong. Everett finally stood and extended his hand. McGrath stared for a second like he didn't trust it, but he took it. I don't forgive you because you said sorry, the judge said. I forgive you because I have to live with this too. And I'm not giving that moment any more space in my mind than it deserves. McGraw nodded slowly, turned, and left the office without another word. The door closed behind him. For the first time since it all happened, Judge Everett sat back and allowed himself a breath, a full one. No tension in his shoulders, no eyes on him, just a man in a chair doing his job and choosing not to carry someone else's mistake as a weight. But this story wasn't just about a judge, a deputy, or a rest stop. It was about the country, about all the silent moments where people get tested and what they do next when no one's watching. 2 weeks later, life had mostly gone back to normal. The courthouse no longer had reporters camped outside. The video was still being shared, but it wasn't front-page news anymore. New scandals had taken its place. That's how these things work. People move on, but not everybody. A group of local high school students invited Judge Everett to speak at their civics class. It wasn't something he usually did. He was more comfortable behind a bench than in front of a whiteboard, but he agreed. Maybe because he knew the story didn't belong to just him anymore. Maybe because some lessons are too real for textbooks. He stood in front of 30 students in a small classroom at Fort Smith High, suit jacket on, tie slightly loosened. One of the students, a black girl sitting near the back, raised her hand. Were you scared? She asked. The room got quiet. He thought about it. No, he said finally. Not scared, just tired. Because I knew what was happening, and I knew it wasn't new. Another student, this one white, leaned forward, but once they knew you were a judge, they stopped. Doesn't that mean the system works? Judge Everett's eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't mad, just focused. No, he said. It means the system worked for me. That's the problem. You shouldn't need a title or a badge to be treated like a person. I don't want special treatment. I want equal treatment. He looked around the room, searching for faces. I've ruled on hundreds of cases. I've locked people up and I've given people second chances. I've read every law they expect you to follow. But let me tell you something you won't find in the books. The law only works when the people behind it care more about what's right than what's easy. One of the students nodded slowly, scribbling something in their notebook. You're going to grow up in a world that tells you to keep your head down. That things are just how they are. Don't believe that. Speak up, record it, share it, question it, because silence is how injustice survives. He paused, then smiled. Not for the cameras, but for the kids, for the future. That moment at the rest stop didn't break me, but it reminded me that power doesn't change everything. It just reveals who you already are. And when the time comes, you have to decide. Will you be the person who looks away, or the one who steps forward? A slow, thoughtful silence settled in. The teacher thanked him. The students clapped, not loudly, but with the kind of respect that can't be taught. Later that evening, back at home, Yvonne handed him a cup of coffee and sat beside him on the porch. They didn't talk much. They didn't have to. The Aylas were blooming again. Same porch, same man. But something had changed. He didn't need to chase justice anymore. He was justice. Quiet, steady, unshaken. And maybe, just maybe, That was enough to start something bigger. If this story moved you, even just a little, don't scroll past it, share it, talk about it. Use your voice. Because someone else's silence might be costing someone their dignity. And change doesn't happen when we wait. It happens when we act. What kind of person will you be when no one's watching? Music,